Hello and welcome to another episode of Analyzing Mormonism. We have been gone for a little while and we're trying to come back and at least twice a month. Hopefully, I say that, but
yeah.
hopefully we can do that.
Can you
What?
Can you commit to?
Will you commit to being to doing a podcast
twice a month?
Yeah. Anyway, so welcome back. If you guys haven't been here for a while, we haven't been here for a while. Anyways, so the episode today is about Captain Kidd and Joseph Smith and the connections between the two of them. But before we get started on that, I wanted to talk about our publishing company for a second. It's mostly yours, but I just help fund it, I guess. I've been doing some things on the Mormon side of it because we're trying to publish old Mormon books, and I should have grabbed some, but one of them is Analyze's book. You can find it on Amazon. If you go to adinapublishers.com, you'll see a little store section, and then you can just look up all the books that we published. So Analyze is one of them. It's beautiful. We kept the original cover that they had. We just updated it.
Yeah, copied it and updated it a little bit.
And then we have John D. Lee's book as well. And this is one of the original covers that has been updated. And we have, where is it? And we have William Smith, Joseph's Brothers little booklet as well up there. I think that's all of the Mormon ones. I don't have a copy of.
Yeah, we also published a queer book called Outsider by Jay Dupree's, which we love and we're very proud of. And then I happen to be, just for fun, writing a queer pirate romance, and that applies to what we're talking about today because I know all about pirates.
Yeah, so our publishing company is adinapublishers.com, and after leaving the church and coming out as gay, we wanted to give the world more queer books to read. Mm-hmm. And so that's our main focus for the company. And we've been having authors submit work. Are you guys still taking submissions?
We usually close submissions. We'll open submissions again in October. So if you have any queer stories, basically of any type, although we would love to see more romances, hit us up. Follow us on all the social medias. Just look up Adina Publishers. We're all over the place.
We have great editors. Fantastic. So our main focus is the LGBTQ stuff, but we're also trying to, again, like I said, publish some old Mormon books, and that's coming slowly, but we need to.
Which one do you think we'll work on next?
I'm working on one called Mormon Portraits. It's an old book that was published a while ago. I cannot remember who wrote it. But I'm halfway through because we have to import things from, and then it's not a perfect system, but we're getting there. It's a slow process. Anyway, so like I said, we are going to be talking about Captain Kidd and Joseph Smith and all the connections. And so what I've done, and I've released some TikToks about this before, or some Instagram videos or whatever, wherever you watch my videos. But I found these, as far as I know, these are all the sources that I could find on Joseph Smith and Captain Kidd. So if there's more that I missed, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to add to this little collection.
Sources. That's what she does.
Yes.
All day, every day is sources.
Yeah.
Either reading them or writing them down.
I love them. Today I was going through newspapers, and we're going to talk about some of them today in this podcast, but newspapers that Joseph Smith's dad had subscribed to when he was getting every week. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at what they say. And anyway, I love doing this.
Wait, before you move on from this slide, why did you make Joseph Smith look like this handsome little model person?
So these are both AI images. All three of them are. I just type in blonde man from the 1800s, and that's what it gives me. So,
but wasn't he not that handsome?
No, I don't think he was. His portraits from Nauvoo are not this attractive, and the portrait that they think is Joseph Smith is not what I consider.
But Captain Kidd was definitely that handsome. So I have no comments on that.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to the first slide. And so this first slide is from one of the newspapers that Joseph Smith's dad had subscribed to. It's called the Wayne Sentinel. And this one was published in the February 16th issue. And we are going to read that. Let me make the screen bigger. Okay, will you read that actually?
The February 16th, 1825 issue of Palmyra's Wayne Sentinel reprinted a piece from the Windsor, Vermont Journal that read, "Money digging. We are sorry to observe, even in this enlightened age, so prevalent a disposition to credit the accounts of the marvelous. Even the frightful stories of money being hid under the surface of the earth and enchanted by the devil or Robert Kidd are received by many of our fellow citizens as truths."
Yeah, so I thought that was super interesting because here you have Joseph Smith's dad. Joseph Smith is treasure digging. He is stooped in this really heavily, and he's looking for the treasure of Captain Kidd. And the newspaper that Joseph Smith's family is even getting, it's saying that we have a lot of residents looking for this treasure.
And they're like, this is silly, guys. Calm down.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, Rochester Gem. May 15th, 1830. Within a month and a half of the Book of Mormon's first public appearance in Grandin's bookstore in Palmyra, an article appeared in the Rochester Gem describing an attempt by one of the Smith sons at finding Kidd's treasure. If we remember aright, it was in the year 1815 that a family of Smiths moved into these parts and took up their abode in a miserable hut on the east bank of the river, now near the late David K. Carter's tavern. They had a wonderful son of about 18 years of age who, on a certain day, as they said, while in the road, discovered a round stone the size of a man's fist, the which, when he first saw it, presented to him on the one side all the dazzling splendor of the sun in full blaze, and on the other the clearness of the moon. He fell down insensible at the sight, and while in the trance produced by the sudden and awful discovery, it was communicated to him that he was to become an oracle, and the keys of mystery were put into his hands, and he saw the unsealing of the book of fate. He told his tale for money. Numbers flocked to test his skill, and the first question among a certain class was, if there was any of Kidd's money hid in these parts in the earth. The oracle, after adjusting the stone in his hat, and looking in upon it some time, pronounced that there was. The question of where being decided upon, there forthwith emerged a set, armed with pickaxe, hoe, and spade, out into the mountains to dislodge the treasure. We shall mention but one of the money diggers. His name was Northrop. He was a man so unlike anything of refined humankind that he might well be called a demi-devil, sent forth upon the world to baffle the elements of despair and wrestle with fate. Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
As you will suppose, he was an enemy to all fear. Northrop and his men sallied out upon the hills of the East River and commenced digging. The night was chosen for operation. Already had 2 nights been spent in digging, and the third commenced upon, when Northrop with his pickaxe struck the chest. The effect was powerful, and contrary to an explicit rule laid down by himself, he exclaimed, "Damn me, I've found it!" The charm was broken. The scream of demons, the chattering of spirits, and hissing of serpents rent the air, and the treasure moved. The oracle was again consulted, who said that it had removed to the deep hollow.
And so it said at the beginning of this that there was one of the Smiths was called an oracle. And so we're not really sure who the article is referring to. We're not sure if it's Joseph Smith Jr. or one of his brothers. We know that Alvin was born in 1798 and Hiram was born in 1800 because it was saying that one of the boys was 18 years old. It seems to make more sense for it to be Joseph. And I just wanted to show this is a printed replica of Joseph Smith's sear stone. And that was one of the things they were talking about. I don't remember when he got this when he was, this one, I think when he was digging for Willard Chase. So I'm assuming that this is the one, although he had up to 5, I think. I know he got a white one at some point. So I can't remember if it was this one or the white one, but I think it was this one.
I would like to point out that one does not look like the sun on one side and the moon on the other. So
that's true. So maybe it was a different one. But it also talked about it lighting up, right? So
yeah, and neither of us felt insensible when we looked at it. So how can we even know? No proof.
Anyway, so yeah, that's a pretty intense story.
Yeah.
Just very treasure digging, very occultic. And we've done an episode about him killing animals, right? Didn't we do a whole episode on that about him killing the sheep and the dogs? And so yeah, if you want to learn more, you just go watch that other one. In his 1834 book, Mormonism Unveiled, E.D. Howe stated that all who became intimate with them, the Smiths, during this period, unite in representing the general old character of old Joseph and his wife, the parents of the pretended prophet, as lazy, indolent, ignorant, and superstitious, having a firm belief in ghosts and witches, and telling of fortunes, pretending to believe that the earth was filled with hidden treasures buried there by Kidd or the Spaniards. And this reminded me also of the witches, because Joseph Smith's, one of his ancestors, they burned witches at the stake. They helped that whole process. So like back in Joseph Smith's line, there was witch hunters. And then closer to modern day, there was witches and wizards, or what you can consider witches and wizards, because they're like
definitely
right. So I just think that's interesting. So they went from fighting off, or at least killing these women,
women,
to
To
practicing.
being the ones that should have been burned at the stake.
No,
apparently.
nobody should be shamed for their. We do not believe in burning witches.
No, we don't. All right. General Joseph Smith's appeal to the Green Mountain Boys, 1843. In 1843, a pamphlet was sent out titled General Joseph Smith's Appeal to the Green Mountain Boys. The Green Mountain Boys were formed in 1770 by settlers in present-day Vermont, wishing to protect their landholding from claim by New York. The appeal evoked an immediate response from unidentified parties in Strafford, Orange County, Vermont. On 15 February 1844, those claiming familiarity with the Smiths wrote to Thomas Sharp.
So I had to give this one because in order for this next slide to make sense, I had to explain a little bit about what was going on. So if you'll read this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the response. These are the Green Mountain Boys reaching back out and talking about the Smiths.
Okay, so they wrote to Thomas Sharp. How much wisdom, prudence, and virtue our presidents, governors, and rulers will obtain by your appeal to us, we leave for time to say. But one thing they will readily discover, your eagerness for discord and civil commotions, your diabolical and treasonable object. As for ourselves, we believe you stand in the same position as the pirate does, and it has been your cry from first to last. But we have no sympathy for you, but say to you, remember Haman. If you studied piracy while digging for the money your father pretended old Bob Kidd had buried, you should also have studied the fate of pirates.
So this is just they're saying that your dad pretended that he was looking for treasure from Kidd. I'm sure he really thought he was searching for the treasure of Kidd, but I just really like that they're wording it like, yeah.
The fate of pirates.
Yeah.
Dead men tell no tales.
Okay, so another one is in Pomeroy Tucker's book, Origin, Rise, and Progress of Mormonism. And he says, so he's a resident of Palmyra, and he claims to have firsthand knowledge of the Smiths. So he said Joseph, moreover, as he grew in years, had learned to read comprehensively, in which qualification he was far in advance of his elder brother, and even of his father. And this talent was assiduously devoted, as he quitted or modified his idle habits, to the perusal of works of fiction and records of criminality, such, for instance, as would be classed with the dime novels of the present day. The stories of Stephen Burroughs and Captain Kidd and the like presented the highest charms for his expanding mental perceptions. And so I like this one because Pomeroy Tucker is also talking about Joseph Smith's education. And I've been doing a lot of research on that too. And William Davis is one I would really, if you want to learn more about Joseph Smith's formal education, I would really go to his work. It's really well done. And so I really like how he's saying that Joseph Smith was well learned in his own way, because the Smiths did go to school. There's several accounts of him attending, and then if you count up all the times of him going, he would have had at least 7.5 years of formal education, which is a lot more than the church claims. The church claims he only had 3 years. And then Joseph himself, in his 1832 First Vision account, or his 1832 history, he talks about how from 12 years old to 15 he was really studying the Bible. And so we know that he's reading a lot. And so here I like this where he says he was reading the dime novels and he was really interested in Captain Kidd, which makes sense because if his dad and him and his brothers are searching for treasure, it makes sense for him to be interested in what they're searching for. So anyway, I like this account. So yeah.
He's into true crime.
Yeah.
All right. Orrin Porter Rockwell. In November 1872, Elizabeth Kane interviewed Orrin Porter Rockwell, who was a schoolmate and friend of the Smiths. Not only was there religious excitement, but the phantom treasure of Captain Kidd were sought for far and near, and even in places like Cumorah.
So yeah, I like this one also. Orrin Porter Rockwell isn't specifically saying that Joseph Smith was searching for the treasure of Captain Kidd, but he was a schoolmate from him. He was a friend of the Smiths. And he was talking about even Cumorah. And so, like, to me, it just kind of speaks to the one and the same, especially with all these other accounts of Joseph Smith searching for Captain Kidd's treasure. Yeah, what?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Orrin Porter Rockwell, was he the murderer guy?
Oh, the
security guard.
Security guard,
dude,
yeah. I think he was a security guard.
Who murdered people for Joseph Smith and Brigham Young?
Yeah, he was the one. I think it was him specifically that John C. Bennett really thought that Joseph asked Orrin Porter Rockwell to go and kill Governor Ford and the attempted assassination for him, or Governor Boggs, not Governor Ford, Governor Boggs. But yeah, Joseph, nothing happened about that. So yeah, that's.
But if you go to Nauvoo, there's like T-shirts that are like Port Rockwell, like,
oh yeah,
wanted dead or alive or whatever.
Yeah,
because he's like a notorious bad guy.
Yeah,
I'm like, how cute that they're owning up to one guy being a criminal. Anyway.
So this one is from an early Danish convert named John Amundsen. He reported that quote, Joseph Smith found his plates while he was digging for treasure, which was supposed to have been buried by the notorious buccaneer Captain Kidd in the western part of New York State. So this is a very simple one. It was originally published in Danish in 1876 and then later republished in 1984. And that's where I found this source. But just another source that says that Joseph, during the time of him getting the plates, he was digging for the treasure of Captain Kidd.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a cool looking book.
It's a pretty cool cover. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like it. All right. W.D. Purple. That's a great name. All right. William D. Purple was a physician who moved to South Bainbridge, New York about 1824. He claims to have attended Joseph Smith's 1826 court hearing and to have kept notes at Justice Albert Neely's request. He would have had firsthand knowledge of the Smith dealings. Quote, about this time, 1825, he, Joseph Smith Jr., took upon himself a monomaniacal impression to seek for hidden treasures which he believed were buried in the earth. He hired help and repaired to northern Pennsylvania in the vicinity of Lanesborough to prosecute his search for untold wealth which he believed to be buried there. Whether it was the 90 bars of gold and dollar... What? Is that a song?
It's a song, yeah.
Whether it was the 90 bars of gold and dollars many-fold that Captain Robert Kidd, the pirate of a preceding century, had despoiled the commerce of the world, we are not able to say, but that he took his help and provisions from home and camped out on the Black Hills of that region for weeks at a time, was freely admitted by himself and family.
Perfect. Any thoughts on that? I like the song. There's a song reference. We'll reference it later. Joseph Smith committed some of the song to memory, and so I just like that they're throwing that in there.
Well, can you hum a few bars?
Oh no, I don't have it memorized, but I can maybe play. I was thinking about maybe playing a section at the end, just so you guys can get a feel of it.
Love a pirate shanty.
Uh-huh. Okay, so in his book, The Prophet of Palmyra, Thomas Gregg gives the following account of what he has learned concerning Joseph Smith, so not firsthand knowledge. Quote, we find him, Joseph Smith Jr., at an early age, trying his skill at little tricks to impose on the credulity of his ignorant associates. As he grew in years, searching for lost treasure became one of his favorite employments. For was it not better, he reasoned, to obtain the golden thousands from the nooks and crevices of the earth, where Captain Kidd and the pirates and Roberts had secreted them, and live in ease and idleness, than to obtain a small competency by the slow and uncertain process of honest labor. And thus he plodded on, till accident opened a new career for him. In his book, he also published a letter written in 1882 by one Stephen S. Harding, and we'll talk about that in a second, but I like this idea. In a lot of these accounts of Joseph Smith's treasure digging, they say that Joseph Smith didn't actually do any digging. So I thought that was funny because they're talking about idleness and why, like, get rich. Joseph was into these get rich quick schemes. He and his dad and his family. So I just thought it was funny that Joseph Smith wasn't really from those accounts. And these can be antagonistic accounts, but that he didn't spend his time digging. He actually just spent his time looking in the hat.
Well, so that doesn't sound right because the motto for Deseret is like busy bee, right? So does that not apply to
Joseph?
to the yeah.
So much of what I've seen that Joseph Smith does is to get out of labor, the hard labor. So I just thought that was interesting. Okay, so going on to the letter from Stephen Harding.
Stephen S. Harding was originally from Palmyra, New York. Harding evidently knew the Smiths well and said that he had spent nights at the Smith home. Quote, when I left my home in the West, I had never heard of Mormonism by that name. When I was a student at Brookville, Indiana in the fall of 1827, the Brookville Enquirer was laid upon my table when my eye fell upon a paragraph, credited to some Eastern paper, of the finding of a book of metallic plates called the Golden Bible. It was found by a young man by the name of Joe Smith, who had spent his time for several years in telling fortunes and digging for hidden treasures, and especially for pots and iron chests of money supposed to have been buried by Captain Kidd. This paragraph interested me more at the time from the fact that all this had happened near the village of Palmyra, New York. I had at the time no certain recollection as to who this Joe Smith was, but remembered having seen a long-legged, tow-headed boy of that name who was generally fishing in the mill pond at Durfee's grist mill on Mud Creek, when my elder brother and I went to the mill. This boy was about 3 years older than myself, and it turned out that he was the veritable finder of the Golden Bible.
Yeah. So I also like the description of Joseph Smith, the long-legged, toe-headed boy. But that's funny. And the image of him fishing. I don't usually think of Joseph Smith in that way. And then I just randomly in Nauvoo, we went to a restaurant and there was a painting of Joseph Smith on the banks of a river, and Emma was in a canoe. And I was like, what the heck? I didn't know that Emma went canoeing.
But apparently that's a well-known fact.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
She's a canoeer.
Yeah. Okay, so J.H. Kennedy informs us that even before the Smiths settled in western New York, quote, Joseph Smith Sr. was at times engaged in hunting for Captain Kidd's buried treasure, unquote, in Vermont. And this is from J.H. Kennedy's book called Early Days in Mormonism, Palmyra, Curlin, and Nauvoo, which was published in 1888. So that's just another source. I don't think he would have had firsthand knowledge, but he certainly was aware that this was happening. Do you want to keep going on this one?
Sure. So, in speaking of Joseph Smith Jr., he said, the boy's education, or rather the rude smattering of learning that went by that name, was but added preparation for that which lay before him. He was not given to books, and the few he was persuaded to read were of vicious tendency, and set his imagination in the wrong direction. So, the dime novels,
The dime novels, yeah, probably.
His favorites have been described as The Life of Stephen Burroughs, a scoundrel dressed in the garb of the church, and the Autobiography of the Pirate Kidd. Smith afterward made confession that the book last named made a deep impression upon him, and owned to a special fascination in these lines found therein. My name was Robert Kidd, as I sailed, and most wickedly I did. God's laws I did forbid, as I sailed.
Yeah, so there's the song I was talking about. So Joseph apparently committed these lines to memory, and I thought that was kind of fun. Most wickedly I did, as God's laws I did forbid, as I sailed. Yeah, it's like the like I picture, like if I ever, like I think it'd be really fun if they made a TV show about Joseph Smith, and it'd be fun, like, you know, the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean where it's like yo ho, I don't know, it was just like creepy, and like so this would be like a cool. Anyway.
With a bandage over his eyes, he would fall upon his knees and bury his face in the depths of an old white hat, where the stone was already hidden. Out of these oracular depths, he would tell his gaping audience where the treasures of Kidd and others lay concealed, locate the trail of wandering flocks, point out the deposit of stolen goods, and perform other wonderful things which only those of that faith which asked no questions could believe.
Thank you. So all of those came from J.H. Kennedy's book. And again, he's talking about the old white hats and how Joseph Smith would look into it, which is exactly the same method Joseph Smith used when he was translating the Book of Mormon. And I say that with air quotes because Joseph didn't really translate. That's not how a translation works.
Translate requires it to go from one language to another, and it wasn't anywhere
to translate also you have to understand both languages. Yeah, from moving, but he wasn't doing that. It was just showing up on this little sear stone. And so even in a faith-based way, or however you say that, that's not a translation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a fun name.
Okay.
Philetus was born in Palmyra in 1811 and evidently had first-hand knowledge of the Smiths and their treasure hunting. He told his history to a student of his named Reverend J.S. Nasmith nearly 50 years ago, placing the account sometime around 1873. Quote, Joseph had for a library a copy of the Arabian Nights, stories of Captain Kidd, and a few novels. Joseph claimed to know where Captain Kidd had hidden money in Palmyra.
So yeah, he's adding to his books. So we know that he had Captain Kidd's book and Stephen Burroughs, and then he's saying now he also had the Arabian Nights books, and yeah, more of the same.
It sounds like he's got great taste.
Joseph. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm not judging his taste anyway. Philetus continues. No one could find it unless digging in the night. When they came near, the devil would frighten them away. They must never mind him, but dig on, or he would drag the treasure down deeper. The men worked hard and long, but saw no signs of gold, when Mr. Ellsworth, growing convinced of his folly, determined to play a joke upon his comrades. Going to the hill before the others, he scattered a train of powder around. About midnight, when the men were thinking of the signs that might come any moment, Ellsworth dropped his pipe on the powder. As it flashed, he shouted, "The devil is coming! The devil is coming!" when one and all ran for dear life.
I love that story. What a great story. Like he's just trying to. So like, yeah, in all these accounts, in order for the magic to work, you would do it at night. And that's how even Joseph Smith getting the plates, it was recorded to have happened at night on the autumn equinox. And he was dressed in black and he rode a black horse. And like, it was very occultic. in getting the plates. But anyway, so going at night was a thing that they had to do. Anyway, just so this story is just really funny that he puts this trail of gunpowder and then lights it and then freaks everybody out.
It sounds like a trick my grandpa would have played. It's fun.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
Okay, so William Riley Hine was a resident at Colesville, Windsor Township, New York, who claimed firsthand knowledge of the Smith family. Quote, Joe Smith claimed to be a seer. He had a very clear stone about the size and shape of a duck's egg. Okay, so there's a white stone that Joseph Smith has, and this is what I'm assuming he's talking about. And claimed that he could see lost or hidden things through it. He, Joseph, saw Captain Kidd, the pirate, sailing on the Susquehanna River during a freshet, which is when the tide gets high, and that he buried 2 pots of gold and silver. He claimed he saw writing cut on the rocks in an unknown language, telling where Kidd buried it, and he translated it through his peepstone. I have had it many times and could see in it whatever I imagined. Joe claimed it was found in digging a well in Palmyra, New York. He said he borrowed it. Joe dug for Kidd's money on the west bank of the Susquehanna, half a mile from the river. And so also, so they were talking about digging a well. I really think he and I don't remember exactly, but I thought that he got the striped one digging the well, but maybe he got the white one digging for the well and for Willard Chase.
He borrowed it.
So there's a story of him. He gets since it was on Willard Chase's property, it belongs to Willard Chase. And Willard, in the accounts, Willard says, oh, you can borrow it. And so Joseph was using it. And then after a while, because it was proving successful to Joseph, Willard wanted it back. And then Joseph was like, I'm not giving it back to you. This is mine now. And so I think that's what this guy means by he borrowed it, because there was a problems with the ownership of it. Also, the Susquehanna River is the same one in which Joseph and Oliver were baptized. And so I thought that was interesting because there's like even Captain Kidd connections with the Susquehanna River. But also, I really think it's funny too. I made a TikTok about this earlier, but that we think of Joseph Smith translating like the Book of Mormon, the Bible, the scroll of John the Beloved, the little parchment, and the Kinderhook plates, the Book of Abraham scrolls. And I hadn't really thought about it, but like this, I love this story because he's translating something from Captain Kidd, which it doesn't really make sense though, because in the cave there's there's writing on the wall that it's in an unknown language and it says where the treasure is buried. But like, why would Kidd do that? Why would he bury his treasure and then write the map? Like, these are the directions how to get to this cave. Like,
they're directions and not just like an X marks the spot.
Well, because it says they translated. He claimed he saw writing cut on the rocks in an unknown language, telling where Kidd buried it. So it doesn't make sense, right? So
I mean, if it's like a map, that doesn't really make sense. If it's like literally like his treasure's buried here, dig here, that could make sense.
Well, and it reminds me of later. What's his name? Oh, okay. So later, James Strang, he starts his own church. He breaks up from the Mormon Church, and he finds these little tablets. I can't remember if they're gold. Anyway, these little metal tablets, and on one of them, and you can see recreations of this online. One of them is a map to where the plates are. So it's like, why would you do that?
Why would you leave the map with that's like leaving your keys in your car. Like, how do you get in?
Right. Yeah. So it just doesn't really make any sense, this story, but yeah, it's a great story.
All right. K.E. Bell.
Okay. So both of these, I should note also that both of these were published in a newspaper kind of thing. It was called Naked Truths About Mormonism, and it was published on January of 1888. And then these accounts were taken. The first one was 1888, and this one comes from 1885, but from the same newspaper.
All right. So K.E. Bell was a resident of Harpersfield, Delaware County, New York. He claimed to have attended the first Mormon meeting Pratt and Cowdery held in Painesville. His brother Milo evidently knew the Smiths personally. Quote, "My brother Milo from Broome County, New York, was present. They told about Prophet Joe Smith finding the gold plates and said they saw them. My brother ridiculed them after the meeting. He told me he knew Joe Smith when he was digging near the Susquehanna River for Captain Kidd's money. Joe had a peepstone through which he claimed to see hidden or buried treasures. Joe sold shares to all who would buy and kept the money. He said they would all make a circle, and Joe Smith claimed if they threw any dirt over the circle, the money chest would leave. They never found any money."
So this is another account of the Susquehanna River connections to Captain Kidd. And I also think it was interesting where he says he sold shares. So there's one record of Joseph Smith where I don't think he sold it, but it was more like it was I can't remember what it's called, a statement where it says like, if we find this treasure, we're going to split it in this many ways. And so it was just a contract with his other fellow diggers. But I don't think that anyone like bought into this statement or this contract. But so that's an interesting thing, that if that did happen, that's super interesting. But certainly he was getting paid by people who would hire him. So he was making money in that way, because he would spend his time, like hours, doing all these rituals and things like that. So this woman named Anna Ruth Eden, she and her husband, Reverend Horace Eden, moved to Palmyra in 1849. And so she had to rely on the testimony of others for her stories about the Smiths. So she's moving to Palmyra years later, and then so she's around people who know the Smiths. Joe Smith could read, a quote, Joe Smith could read, he could not write. His 2 standard volumes were The Life of Stephen Burrows, The Clerical Scoundrel, and the autobiography of Captain Kidd, the Pirate. This latter work was eagerly and often perused. There was a fascination to him in the charmed lines, My name is Robert Kidd, as I sailed, and most wickedly I did, as I sailed. So again, this is just more of the same, where he has the Stephen Burrows book and he has Captain Kidd's book. Also, I think it's funny that she says he could read, but he could not write. And we know that this is not the case, because Joseph Smith, at least by this point, he's well passed away. And he has, there's letters that he wrote to Emma and others that are well written. And yeah, so
but
we know.
Had really bad spelling and handwriting.
Well, so
maybe.
And then you have to say that the spelling wasn't standardized until later. Like when Joseph Smith was writing the Book of Mormon, there was no standard way of spelling. So you can't really dog on Joseph for that. Nobody could spell.
Just specifically that, we can't.
Yeah. But anyway.
But I like how they're repeating this song. So sounds like he really liked this song.
right.
So everybody knows it.
Yeah. Okay, so Anne Ruth Eden goes on to say, she says, at the early age of 15, while watching his father digging a well, Joe espied a stone of curious shape. It must have borne resemblance to this stone foot of Buddha, which Mrs. House tells us of at Bangkok, Siam. All the difference, this was smaller, like a child's foot. At any rate, it has left footprints on the sands of time. Quote, this little stone was the acorn of the Mormon oak, unquote. This was the famous Palmyra sear, or peak stone, with which Joe Smith did most certainly divine. Being before instructed by his mother, he immediately set up a claim to miraculous power. In the kneeling posture, with the bandage over his eyes, so luminous was the sight without it, with the stone in a large white stovepipe hat and his hat in front of his face, he saw things unutterably wonderful. He could reveal full too well the place where stolen property or wandering flocks could be found. Caskets of gold stored away by the Spaniards or by his hero, the redoubtable Captain Kidd. Coffers of gems, oriental treasure, the wealth of Ormus and of Ind gleamed beneath the ground in adjacent fields and woodlands.
All right, Anne goes on to say, digging became the order of the night and sleep that of the day. Father and brothers, decayed neighbors, all who could be hired with cider or strong drink, we organized into a digging phalanx. They sallied forth in the darkness. Solemn ceremonies prefaced the work. Not a sod was disturbed by the spade till Joe's mystic wand, the witch hazel, guided by the sacred stone, pointed out the golden somewhere. Entire silence was one condition of success. When hours had passed away and the answering thud on the priceless chest was about to strike the ear, someone, in a rapture of expectancy, always broke the spell by speaking.
They have to play the quiet game during these.
The riches were spirited away to another quarter, and the digging must be resumed another night. Thus matters went on for 7 or 8 years. Little or no attention was paid to the performances of Smith near his home. Lovers of the marvelous from other towns now and then came in to see and hear something new. People from greater distances visited the several excavations and wondered. Newspapers heralded and ridiculed, but so far it amounted to nothing unless it created a certain atmosphere heavy with myth and mystery, favorable to future developments.
Okay, so that one's really interesting, and she again talks about the sear stone. Hang on,
and he has a wand.
Oh yeah, so he's got the what is that called? Divining rod or witch hazel stick. So it's got one end and then two, and you hold it. It's like a little triangle. I have one somewhere.
It's like a Y.
Yeah, the Y-shaped one, or people use divining rods where it's like an L shape, and you hold it, and it will cross over. I think if the answer is yes, and separate if it's no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is just a really fascinating story. And also she talked about doing this for 8 years. And so Dan Vogel has done great work on the locations of Joseph Smith's treasure digs. And he talks about how Joseph Smith, he started treasure digging around 1820. And then when the Book of Mormon was getting published, it was like 1828. So I think he was still, and he went to trial in 1826. And so I think that 8 is probably good. Like that's probably, it's a good estimation. I had more thoughts on this slide. Let me see if I can remember what I was going to say. Oh, the bandage over his eyes. That's really unusual.
I think that's the second time somebody has said that he had a bandage over his eyes.
Oh, interesting. Here, oh yeah, you're right. It was J.H. Kennedy. It talked about a bandage. And then this account with Anna Ruth Eden, she talks about a bandage. So I thought that was really interesting. I haven't heard that before. Certainly he didn't use a bandage when he was translating the Book of Mormon, but we know it was the same method where he sticks the rock in his hat and he hides his face over it. It's super interesting. Also, I think it's interesting also that there's a rule when you're treasure digging, at least for Joseph Smith's, it seems to be that you can't talk. And so like, if that's the case and you have all these people coming and you've built them up to do this dig, I think that'd be the easiest way to go, is to have them not talk. Because then you don't have to answer questions. And it's just like, I don't know, it keeps the facade up a little bit longer.
And if you're paying them with cider or a strong drink, they're going to get a little tipsy. And then one of them eventually is going to speak and you can be like, oh, no, it's your fault. It's not mine.
True. Okay, so this account comes from Eleni Dickinson, and this is in 1885. So this is not personal knowledge from her. This is from secondhand sources. So she says, it is said that Joseph at an early age could read, but not write, and when quite young committed these lines to memory from the story of Captain Kidd, the notorious pirate, which seemed to give him great pleasure. My name is Robert Kidd, as I sailed, and most wickedly I did, as I sailed. And that was the last account that I could find with Joseph Smith, connecting Joseph Smith to Robert Kidd. And she seems to just be taking straight from some of these earlier stories, because she's like, Joseph couldn't, he could read, but not write, which we know isn't true, but.
Well, it says at an early age.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But anyway, so these are all the sources of Joseph Smith and Captain Kidd. And I think it's super interesting. Like, I don't know, the whole occultic stuff, the treasure digging, the spells and pirates, super interesting to me. So yeah. And yeah, hopefully I can play the song for you guys, just so you guys can get a flavor of what that's like. You look it up on YouTube, but I'll cite it in the end. Anyway, okay. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully we're going to start doing this at least a couple of times a month.
That's the goal.
I've been on Mormon Stories a lot, and I've been doing episodes for them. And so I'm going to keep doing that. And so like, you'll find me in both places, I guess.
You'll find her in both places.
But hopefully you can join me on some TikToks again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anyway, take care, guys. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other, and have a great day.
Make good life choices.
Bye.
Oh, my name was Captain Kidd, as I sailed. Oh, my name was Captain Kidd, as I sailed. My name was Captain Kidd, and God's laws I did forbid, as so wickedly I did, as I sailed. So wickedly I did, as I sailed. Oh, I murdered William Moore, as I sailed. I murdered William Moore, as I sailed. I laid him in his gore, not many leagues from the shore. Oh, I murdered William Moore, as I sailed. I murdered William Moore, as I sailed. I spied 3 ships from Spain, as I sailed. Oh, I spied 3 ships from Spain, as I sailed. I spied 3 ships from Spain, I fired on them amain, and most of them I slain, as I sailed. And most of them I slain, as I sailed. Come all you young and old, see me die. Come all you young and old, see me die. You are welcome to my goal, and by it I lost my soul. Come all you young and old, I must die. Come all you young and old, I must die.